Hey, this is Trav here, and this podcast relies on the good people who help support this podcast on Patreon, and I'd like to give a big thank you to Bill, Bree, Brendan, Grant, Lisa, Mog, Dan, and Paula. Thank you so much, and here's the show. Hey, welcome to episode 176. I'm touching on the Mind Boat, the slow-moving, sunshine, mystical, hippie bus ride inside the whimsical yellow submarine technicolor dreamscape of my mind. This is Trav Nash speaking, and thank you very much for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate it. Today's show is all about the man with the ruby red sparkling hat, a strange local that I've seen around the place. And I've always wondered what his story is, and I still don't know, but I think that the weird people are wonderful, and I think they make this boring world a little more interesting. So it's a good show, and all you need to do is sit back, relax, consider the possibilities of everything around you, as we set sail. The man with the ruby red glittery cowboy hat. Few people can carry themselves with true self-confidence. It's an absolute rare sight to behold. It's something that once you see it, there's absolutely no doubt what you're seeing. A lot of people can and will try to emulate this level of confidence and swagger, but the stench of self-doubt and constant worry about how they are perceived by the world overpowers the illusion they are trying to pull off. They only fool those who wish to be fooled, or trying to fool others themselves. Those who walk the earth with true confidence and stride are gods among the common, palaces built upon swamps, wings of porcelain and unique gems sewn into immortal angels. As rare as they are beautiful, majestic birds of colour and elegance that are too good for this ugly world. It's these types of people who are opaque the same. Jar you when you walk down those familiar streets, with all those sequenced, repetitive programming. In a sea of average who wear black baseball caps on rainy days, they are like splotches of colour in grey miserable paintings. A presence ripples as they glide through stale, dusty, mundane air, and people will stop what they are doing, and faces go blank until a decision is made of whether they approve or not. It's just not of any importance to anyone who is really anyone, because they know it doesn't matter what the nobodies think, if they can think at all. The average have their faces held up by mangled arms, broken and damaged by years of manual labour and minimum wage. Their faces are stained with drool that loiters at one side of their mouth, and when it thinks nobody is watching, will make a jump like someone leaping from a building on fire. The ugly fluorescent light of the food court where I'm sitting catches the drool in its all-seeing eye, and for a moment it sparkles in the afternoon sunshine in dust and the whitest of all whites. Who would have thought something so common and dead inside could conceive something so beautiful and unintentional? It was right in the middle of this overcrowded smattering of ugly, faded yellow plastic seats and tables that are caked in decades-old melted chain restaurant cheese and a billion spilt coffees where the lids were not sealed correctly. Is this tall man standing in between the segregated eating sections with a bright pink suit, green tie, and a sparkling ruby cowboy hat. One of those cheap hats that you'd get from a rural carnival after you put enough balls into a turning clown's mouth, and the carny would reluctantly give you the cheapest thing they could find that they more than likely found by the side of a road near a tragic road accident. Heads turn as you pass them by. People lower their overstuffed hamburgers to peek over the multi-grain, lightly grilled buns to witness the type of man that few people would ever likely be in their lifetime. He walked unaware of the disruption he was causing and carried on into the supermarket, picked up a red shopping basket and began to take his time inspecting the firmness of the Ceylon kiwi fruit. Some pretended like it wasn't a big deal. Others kept trying to get one last glimpse of what might be the greatest thing they've ever seen and what might happen next. Some fumbled for their phones only to hit record too late and only recorded old pensioners shuffling slowly with bags of rye bread and canned beetroot as they walked towards certain death. One thing was clear, we all witnessed some kind of an event. The second coming of something that was greater than any of us would be in multiple lifetimes. It might have been the hot coffee steam that was rising up and slowly waking up the still sleeping pockets of my brain, but I was deeply fascinated. I wanted to find out more. I wanted to know the backstory, the how and the why this has all led to this moment, and most of all, I wanted to know what the story was with that sparkling ruby cowboy hat. In my area there seems to be a lot of characters, and although it's possible that a lot of them are dangerous, they still add a unique colour to an overly well-planned, gentrified area. It's nice to be reminded that not everyone spun the wheel of life and landed on trust funds and good genetics. I always keep my distance enough to observe from a safe distance, like a nature documentary host who lies in tall grass and observes and tries to understand the savage and beauty of animal instincts. The tall man with a ruby red cowboy hat that I have now seen quite a few times lately, almost as if I was willing him into existence. His strange, eccentric mannerisms rearrange the dead air and send strange vibrations pulsing from unknown pockets of the earth. If I held a compass, its needle would be going wild and pointing in directions that have never been pointed to. I once was in a second-hand store that was furnished with a room full of someone else's once beloved things, now bundled together with others and half-priced yellow tags hanging off the collars. I saw this hat bobbing up and down in between shelves of money boxes, old toasters and board games, with post-it notes stuck to them warning that some pieces are missing but still playable. It was the man with the red ruby cowboy hat, and he was going through a tiny white box filled with family photographs, more than likely donated from nursing homes, from people who have passed on, whose families could no longer be contacted, or maybe they are no longer with us. Now all of these moments and events are just faded glossy portraits that have little to no meaning to anyone anymore, but still they were selling them for 10 cents a photo, next to old postcards with messages telling people they are having a great time and looking forward to seeing them soon. Little did they know they'll end up in op shops some 50 years later. I wondered if he was looking for a missing piece of himself, a lost fragment, or a missing family member, or maybe some kind of donation mixed up where the box of his most treasured items accidentally got donated to the Salvation Army. He carefully examined each one, sometimes holding a few up to the ceiling and squinting as he tried to process the information that is encapsulated in such a frozen moment of time. He finally chose about a dozen photographs and also picked up a second-hand food processor and made his way to the counter with a confident stride, as the old woman behind the counter probably wondered what we're all wondering, what was going to happen next, and where did he get that glittering hat from? Did he purchase it from this store? And if so, he's definitely getting mileage from it. It occurred to me that I've never heard his voice before, and when he spoke it was the kind of voice didn't seem to match his mannerism and dress sense. It was almost as if a lesser man with a microphone was speaking for him, crouched behind milk crates and getting sore knees. His voice was slurred and his words spluttered out like they got caught between his teeth on the way out. It might have been the symptoms of a neurological disorder or maybe some kind of opiate addiction. Still, it did not stop him commanding the room with his presence. Although his words came out misshapen and malformed, they still were delivered strongly, as if you were watching a great declaration of something greater than any of us could have ever dreamed to be. An historical moment playing out right before us. He saw the woman quite confused with the photos he chose, and he felt like he had to give an explanation. "It's for my art, you see. he said as he placed one hand on his hip while the other arm was raised and his wrists fluttered around like trying to catch invisible butterflies. I use these photos as inspiration and portraits of people who live on in my art. I paint them onto matchboxes and old telephone books, and I plan to have an exhibition of my work by Christmas time. The woman behind the counter just stared off, like she could see right through him. Without looking down, she grouped the items together and bagged them and told him that it would be $7 altogether. Do you think you could have change for a $10 note? He asked. Yes, she said, now looking at him as if this question broke the spell of boredom. This is a store. We have change in the till. Although most people pay with a piece of plastic these days, I'll never understand it. As she said this, she began to look up. And maybe was remembering all those dirty coins and plastic notes that she's been receiving and giving away for her entire life. And there's countless hands that would carry on that tradition until the whole world goes online and digital, and nobody has to touch anything gross ever again. Oh no, that's not for me. I'm an old soul who likes old things. The new is for the kids, and not for the old people like ourselves, he said, and began to chuckle. Speak for yourself, the lady behind the counter said, and had now reset her stance back into a bored and dead-eyed pose. Oh, you know what I mean. You have yourself an absolutely fine day now. As he received his change and his bag of items and turned to exit. When he was gone, it was like someone died, left this planet without us. I noticed I wasn't the only one who was watching this conversation. A few others waited for him to leave and then began to mock his voice, and everyone began to comment on why he was wearing that hat, and he must be out of his mind. But I knew this guy wouldn't have cared. He had found his own secret pathway through a completely different world, and it's changed him in a way that makes him see things that others cannot. Who would have thought to find old photographs of other people's holidays at Queensland's Big Banana and paint them onto matchboxes? It's an obscure idea that maybe some of us dream up in those early hours of the morning when your mind wanders and you can't sleep, but few of us actually carry out the necessary steps to follow through with the idea and have an endgame or a goal for it when it's completed. I started to look through the box of photographs myself, see if I can find inspiration, and all I saw was the photographs of couples unnaturally posing with their husbands, ready to go to war and maybe never come back again. Photos of children in brightly coloured plastic pedal cars, and half smiles of families sitting on a gum trees with eyes concealed by dark wraparound glasses, sitting on blue and brown picnic rugs that are probably half price somewhere in the back of the store. I honestly felt weird looking into some strangers' lives. These photographs were obscure. Some looked like they could be album covers for strange indie garage bands from the 90s. It felt like at any moment the owners would come up behind me and I would want an explanation to why I was prying into their lives, shuffling through all this personal moments. But I guess in an era where we're constantly uploading every moment of our day on social media, maybe people these days are a little more open and less paranoid about how much of ourselves we allow to go public. The final photograph in the box was of a woman in black in France. I was pretending to be holding the Eiffel Tower in the palm of her hand, using some strange perspective and camera trickery, and I wondered if she ever knew that how many other people would stand in that very exact spot, performing that very now familiar pose, many years after she originally had this photo taken. The sound of a motorized petrol edge clipper could be heard being started down the end of the street I was walking down, and a man with a face mask began trimming the edges of a nature strip between the fence line and the sidewalk. A huge dust ball of dirt, grass clippings, and engine smog spun together in their own self-propelled vortexes and imploded into wormholes into other dimensions. As I got closer, he looked at me and turned the engine off, and the street fell quiet again. I thanked him and hurried past the path that was now scattered in lawn clippings that were already strangling my ability to breathe normally. As soon as I made it to the corner, the engine started up again, and the smell of petrol and lawn clippings began to rise and engulf the street in memories of Saturday mornings from long-lost childhoods that were temporarily forgotten. I began to walk down the sidewalk parallel to a busy main road that edged along the beach, where a faraway ocean cruise ship can be seen motionless as a monument to the rich and those who saved up their lifetime of vacation time to enjoy that brief fantasy that everything is alright with the world, even for a few pristine days. The sea breeze almost knocked me back as I tried to walk against it, almost turning me in the opposite direction. It was then I could feel something coming up behind me with rapid speed, and I quickly moved to the left, just in time for an old rickety bike that flew past, and all I could hear was a rusted bell that tried its best to ring as it went past, a dying sound of a rusted spring and a corroded metal colliding with one another, making a tinny tone that resonated into the air and evaporated into the sea breeze. And then I realized it was the man with the ruby red cowboy hat. He swayed from side to side as he rode, like if this was the first time he'd ridden this bike in ages. He narrowly avoided colliding with a young couple walking a beagle, and then he suddenly, impulsively, and blindly darted across the main road, narrowly missing a cement mixer and a white ute with planks of wood that slid into the back window as it came to a sudden screeching stop to avoid running over this strange man. The sound of horns, curses and finger signals fell onto deaf ears as the man with the ruby red hat paid no mind and found a gap in between two bushes and made his way to the bike track that followed alongside the ocean, where the mansions got more expensive and abstract the further north he followed it. Maybe he owns one of those massive seaside homes, the ones with the large concrete walls covered in vines and statues of vases filled with dirty rain and crumpled damp leaves. Maybe he just keeps on riding with no specific place to be. Unlike myself, who goes against the wind, he trusts in its ability to guide him into opportunity and adventure. Maybe it was the sea he wanted to return to, but it always seems to spit him back out, back onto the beach, like he has been reset and reborn, and given another chance to try again with a different approach. It's been a week now, and I don't think I've seen him since. Like a ghost, he's gone where a few of us can reach, or maybe he stopped wearing that ruby red hat, and is no longer so easily identifiable. I still find pockets of areas where the air feels like it's charged with his presence, a strange energy like someone has planted hidden magnets that give you a feeling of unease, and your balance becomes all distorted and disorientated. It's these spaces that need to be filled with the last remaining freaks and weirdos to pass through, recharge their wild and untamed minds, to let their strange eccentric spontaneity cause seismic tiny tremors in the earth and shake up the dreamers who sleepwalk down the same streets every day and never look up and notice that things really do change, even if it feels like the same days overlap over one another. A good idea can be conceived in the right conditions. A world that has fallen under the spell of mediocrity and constant fear is a world that is gassed and ready to explode with a new wave of the strange and wonderful, minds that are born ahead of their time, minds that can see something beyond the physical. They can see the could be, not the what is. And this is what we need more of today, the types of people who can see a future if we're going to race ahead into unknown, rocky, uncertain futures. The values of yesterday didn't work. The safe bet wasn't nearly as safe as we thought. In the end, it made the world more dangerous and frightening because the enemy now can hide in plain sight, and it will be too late by the time you realize this. This is why we need those with extra insight, minds that are unaffected by the sniggering and jabs from people who run in circles in their own life sentences, inside prisons they constructed, restrictions they tether themselves from achieving something more, playing it safe and wasting all possibility to fix those broken fragments left all around us from the generation before. Few are born with the right set of eyes and connected to the right working mind. Few are lucky enough to mix the right ingredients together in an incubator to wake them up early from the dream and free themselves and possibly those around them before it's too late. Weirdos have lived on the fringes for far too long, and maybe it's time for them now to take back this world and save it from fools who can't see where we're all going and don't really feel like they need to change it for today. So that's it for another week. Thank you again so much for listening to this episode. I hope it was something you enjoyed, and if you did, then why not leave some kind of review on the very device you're using. Liking and subscribing will keep you up to date as soon as a new episode drops. But most of all, just retweeting this or reposting this on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gmail. I don't know what you people use anymore, but doing so gives me access to people that are outside of my circle. So that would be incredibly appreciated. You can follow this podcast on Twitter and Facebook just by searching for Tales from the Mind Boat in a search engine of your particular. You can follow me on Twitter just by searching for Nashtopia, and you can also follow my art diary on Instagram at Trav Nash Draws Things. And I finished another sketchbook, so all artwork is for sale. If you want to pick up some pieces that are A5 cheap, I normally sell them for about $15 for black and white and $25 for watercolor, any kind of color, I guess. So just hit me up if that's what you're down with. The music for this podcast is composed by Tim Witt. You can listen to his music right now on SoundCloud just by searching for Tim Witt Sounds. You can also pick up his 2 albums that are on Bandcamp. Pay what you will for some of the best music that you'll probably hear all year. This episode was written, read, produced, edited, and sealed with love by me, Trav Nash, and you're welcome. So thank you very much for listening to this episode. I deeply appreciate it. If you can spread this on, that would really help me out. It's been a bit of a low listenership lately. It was up and then it's down. I guess that's the whole game. So if you can pass this on, I'd really appreciate it. And thanks for getting to this point of the podcast. I hope you're doing well and you have a good week. Until next Monday, stay safe, look after yourself, be healthy, and as always, peace.